Welcome, security pros, to another Hacker News webinar. This is an esteemed panel. I mean, for all of you that have been kind of walking through this Hacker News webinar journey, I can't remember the last time we had 4 superstars on one webinar, but that's happening today. Asaf, Bob, Shaun, Swathi, welcome to the Hacker News webinar series. It's great to have you all with us today.
Thank you.
All right, I hope you came ready to talk, right? Because you're an awfully quiet bunch, but this whole concept of a webinar only works when 4 of you speak and I speak less. But we've got a great group of people coming in to this webinar. Thank you for everyone for joining us. We typically say 30, 40 minutes. That's our goal here, but this is a great group of people that's going to be speaking. So let's go ahead and get the ball rolling. Let me get some housekeeping stuff out the way first for all of y'all. 1, comments, questions, bring them in. We want them all, right? So keep commenting, questioning. Asaf will answer all unanswered questions after the fact and from his personal email address to make sure you guys get all your answers. But let me introduce this awesome group that's going to be walking us through today's topic of data security at the petabyte scale. Joining us is Shaun Marion. He's the former CISO of McDonald's. Shaun, welcome to the Hacker News webinar series.
Thanks for having me.
You guys see Robert Bigman there. He's a cybersecurity consultant and former CISO at the CIA. Bob, welcome to the show.
Thank you.
Swathi Joshi, she's the VP SaaS Cloud Security at Oracle. Swathi, welcome.
Thank you, James. Hey, everyone, and thanks, listeners, for tuning in.
And the person who made this all happen, Asaf Kochan, is the former head of Unit 8200 and Sentra's co-founder and president. Asaf, welcome to the Hacker News webinar series.
Thank you, James.
It's a pleasure to have so many awesome people here. So I'm just going to go ahead and say this. When did you guys start confronting challenges at the petabyte level? Who would like to go first?
I'll take a swing because I as you mentioned this, I was thinking maybe not the first time, because I actually don't remember the first time. It's been quite a bit, but I do remember a very memorable time, and I'll actually go very recent because I think about like McDonald's. I assume everybody knows what McDonald's does. Their products are fairly well known, but I bet you probably don't understand the scale with which they do it at. So if we think of data, you typically think of data when you think of McDonald's, you're thinking hamburgers and fries, and that's what you should be thinking of. But last year, their mobile app was downloaded 127 million times, and they have about 30 million active users in the US alone on every single month. That's just a given. So if you think about the backend infrastructure and data required to make sure that all of that works, you get your loyalty points, you get a Big Mac in Texas is the same if you want to grab one in Tel Aviv. Like it should have the same look and feel. That takes a tremendous amount of data. The fun fact is McDonald's feed, this is a true fact, nearly 1% of the world's population every single day. So there's a lot of data going through there, and the general disbursement of that data can be a challenge to make sure it's protected appropriately, and that protection moves with that data wherever it goes. So not the first time I did it, but I think certainly one of the most, I would say, challenging but fun times I had working with data at that scale.
Awesome. I'll give it a try next. So I don't know if it was the most fun time, but the first time I recall was back in the government, and we have a very strict responsibility and program to use metadata and to characterize and catalog and digest our data in a very formal way. And it was becoming very clear very quickly that as we were getting to the petabyte level, our metadata indexers weren't working too well. The problem was we didn't realize it. And it wasn't until user search queries were returning with some, let's say, bizarre results that we realized that the data had quickly overwhelmed our ability to properly index data at the petabyte level. And we literally had to stop ingesting data for a while and figure out how to fix things. So obviously that introduced not just performance issues, but we relied on our metadata for security access as well. And that created a big stir. So yeah, I don't remember it as being fun, but I do remember it as being challenging.
So fun's not the common word for petabyte level data. Swathi, what about you?
Yeah, exactly. To kind of Shaun's point, right? Like this problem has been in existence ever since I started my security career. Probably all of us started our security career. So yeah, initially when I started as a SOC analyst, that's where I started seeing challenges with data, challenges with anomalies, any kind of associated outcomes of that data. And then in a true way, sort of a memorable moment was at Mandiant. So we were collecting all of these IOCs, we were collecting all of these attacker infrastructure and motivation and attack profiles and all of that. And that's where I really got introduced to sort of the graph model, right? Like how do we use nodes? How do we connect the nodes? And how does that interconnected data helpful for our customers? And then definitely, at every job I've taken, the challenges continue from Mandiant to then when I got to Netflix, of course, 1/3 of the internet's traffic is through there. So I was kind of exposed to both engineering challenges, data transportation challenges, and also security challenges associated with it. And I'm excited to kind of go through, all of those three. And then yeah, at Oracle, on the enterprise side of things, right? Like the data only grows. There are different business units on the SaaS side of the house. How can we leverage and use application security data? So yeah, that's kind of been few challenging and fun moments along the way.
Asaf, what are your thoughts?
Yeah, so from my perspective, heading Unit 8200, the core business was around data, was around transforming data into insights and knowledge and actionable knowledge. And throughout my tenure, throughout my period as commander, I really witnessed the exponential growth from single digits to 10 of petabytes, resulting in hundreds of petabytes. And in this sense, this kind of I had as head of unit to balance between the ability to transform data and to run kind of the digital transformation process, enabling the use of data and pushing data to the edge, and in the same time securing it and making sure it gets to the right people and it maintains the right security policies around it. And this became super complex, just knowing where your data is, just understanding how it's moving and where it's coming from, and certainly discovering again and again that you have data that you were not aware you have. So this is my kind of first meeting with large scale petabyte data, and it was kind of the pace of growth here was unbelievable. So were the challenges.
Asaf, you brought something up here, and I think I want us to go a bit deeper on it. What makes securing petabyte type of data different from potentially gigabyte or terabyte types, which are, I'd say, more mainstream now?
Yes. So again, that's my perspective here. Basically, the idea which is now taking center is basically unlocking the potential of data. That's true with digital transformation, definitely with AI capabilities growing. And you really want people in your organization to access it. You want to push it to the edge, and you want to make it relatively easy to deal with data without all the walls getting to the data, because this really what drives prosperity, enables you to gain revenue wherever you are. And in this sense, basically the fact that data is moving from environments, and in the cloud really shouldn't be seen as kind of one single platform. It's an ecosystem. So you have the infrastructure and the platform and the multiple kind of endless SaaSes and endpoints, really being able in a petabyte scale to kind of really understand where your assets are moving to, who's accessing them, what third parties are tapping into it, and kind of being able to run it as it goes and make sure the data maintains the right security kind of layer on it. In petabyte scale, it's super complex, and really, from my experience, there's no way to do it without kind of the root cause for doing it effectively is to discover, classify, and tag your data. You can't really pass it. It's a mission that you have to confront. There's no shortcuts here. So this would be the main difference when it comes to petabyte scale.
Shaun, Swathi, Bob, anything to add?
Yeah, one other thing, I think when you asked about, what's the difference between terabyte and then petabyte, it was the data got and is a lot harder to know, right? We had some ability to understand what data was when it was in the smaller size because it was owned by certain people who performed a specific function, and they pretty much knew their data pretty well. But as we began merging multiple data sets with multiple interest groups around it, right, it became a lot more difficult to apply, again, these metadata labels with any meaning, because there would be collections of data that you hadn't properly analyzed and applied right metadata tags. And we really had to rethink how we did it. By the way, how we did it was we pretty much automated the whole process and took people out of the process because it was just becoming too complicated because of the size of the databases.
I remember, I don't want to age myself. Hopefully I look younger than I am. But I remember going back earlier in my security career, and we would protect the data by building these castles and moats, right? We put them behind protected systems, encrypt all the data. And that was pretty much all we had at our disposal. And I distinctly remember having a discussion with one of my architects at the time, and he was all for, you have to protect the data wherever it is. You can't just build these moats. And I disagreed with him, not strategically. We just didn't have the capabilities to do so. And there was just no way to do that. And I'm going back like in the early 2000s here. You fast forward now, and the data has gotten so big. It's not just that it's gotten big, it's gotten astronomically big. But now it's everywhere. It's mobile. You're using data to create data. You think of like AI, LLMs, things like that. It's multi-region, it's multi-location. That approach to building these moats and walls doesn't work at this scale. It just simply doesn't work. And so I think it's that problem I talked about in the 2000s is obviously now something that we've got capabilities to address. Maybe he was ahead of his time. I don't know, but I think all of this change and all this data has necessitated not only a growth and a security mindset, but it's enabled new technology. We just have to approach it fundamentally different.
Yeah, for me, I think there are three main kind of challenges when we are going higher on the index scale, like you said, James. So I think the first one is data hygiene. Bob touched on it, Asaf touched on it. Even with ML models, I think the ground truth of data is the core problem, right? Like, so how can we tag and classify data? I think that's the data hygiene. And then there's, of course, transportation of that data. Next is data usage. And I think Shaun touched on it. There are so many different consumers of this data, right? Like as a security team, you have your security analyst, you have your data engineers, you have your business folks that want to use it. So who are sort of these different audiences, and what kind of format is this data in? Common informational models and schemas become really, really hard to have all of the data in one single format that's queryable is a huge challenge, because all the data feeds that we get are not really uniform, right? Like they're used for different business purposes. And then the last one I would say is actionable insights. How do you draw any kind of insights from this data? And that comes from using the right type of hygiene, right type of transportation mechanisms, classification, and then right type of schema and informational models from which we can then get insights. So kind of when you go through those steps quickly, like Asaf said, you can see how this problem becomes complex at each stage.
Yeah, it becomes complex and it becomes enormous. And then when you think of cloud adoption, right? You think of a whole new set of challenges that come with it. Swathi, since I have you still on the screen, let me ask you this. Do you think cloud adoption has changed the way we practice data security, even at the petabyte level?
Yeah, 100%. No question about that. And the good news is we wanted to be in this position, right? Like we are glad to be in this position. Imagine the kind of 10 years ago or 15 years ago, convincing everyone to say cloud is a safe space and it's okay that we are moving in that directions, right? So this is a great opportunity. One of the things I do want to kind of highlight and maybe slightly ring an alarm bell to is I think we are becoming data hoarders, right? All the time, our issue is, oh, we don't have enough data, or we want to write this detection, or we want to write this data loss prevention policy. We don't have enough data. I think this is something as a security industry we need to kind of rally behind, trying to really figure out, do we need all of the data or do we really need just relevant data, right? And also, I think the cost is a huge portion. We are thankful now that the costs are lower than what they used to be, say, a decade ago, but still not low enough that we can say, okay, let's get all the data and start doing all these things, right? So I think that's one thing that we as organizations and as a security community need to get better on is relevant data and not all data.
Well, we're now all aware, post Snowflake, the risks of storing your data in a place that's affordable. But anyone else has a take on this? Shaun, I saw you come off mute. Bob, who'd like to take this one?
Yeah, I'd like to build off Swathi's statement there because like data hoarding is not a new problem. If we go back to the late 90s, right? We would save papers, and you don't know what the data is, but I'll probably need it at some point, that piece of paper. So I'll just put it aside and save it. That's okay when you're talking about file folders and things like that. You get to the petabyte scale, the risks you're accepting aside. Let's put the security risks aside just for a second. The amount of legal risk you're carrying in there is tremendous. And now I'll talk about the security side, the amount of security risk, and to the point earlier, where data is now even creating additional data, based on insights and metadata and so forth. It becomes so gargantuan. I've been a CISO at 3 different companies, large scale companies, and this is a problem everywhere. When I talk to my peers, it's a problem there. People want to keep the data because they think, what if I do need this, or I don't know what this is, so I'll save it just in case. And this problem perpetuates itself, and then we don't really know what's out there. So I would love to get to a place where I think when we talk about like data governance, data hygiene, there is a policy and a process in place to actually have data lifecycle management, and that includes the destruction of the data at the end when it's no longer needed.
Yeah, Bob, anything to add to that? Asaf?
Yeah, I'll be honest with you. Most of the companies I work with are pretty bad about their data. They don't really invest much time, energy, or interest in understanding it, knowing it, cataloging it, labeling it, properly classifying it. And as a result, as we recently saw, it eventually gets them in trouble, right? Whether it's in a data center that they own, or whether it's in AWS or Azure, they really don't know. What I found is they really don't know what they have where, who's using it, who has access to it. It's pretty ugly. So I'm not surprised that issues like Snowflake come up. And that's not even to mention the number of people who now potentially have access to it because of the underlying infrastructure and those who have management access to it. So yeah, I'm a pessimist when it comes to securing data in the cloud. Not that the tools aren't available. The tools are mostly available. It's just these people never manage the data well on-prem. What makes you think that they're going to do it any better in the cloud, right?
Because it's virtual, Bob. It's virtual.
Yeah, right.
Virtually everything works.
Yeah. Well, we had virtual on-prem too, so it didn't work there.
I'd like to follow up on Bob's remarks. So the good news about the cloud and the huge opportunities, it was not just designed around the idea of storing data, but it was designed also to enable processing data. the storage part, the compute, the immense compute, the elasticity, the ability to add on the fly services and applications. These are abilities which were not designed specifically to secure the data, but to enable and to unlock the potential of data. But if you apply these features correctly, you have an amazing opportunity to do very effective security in the cloud, mainly enabling you to process risk around data and understand the risk around data and follow the data. And in this sense, I see the cloud, and the cloud was designed with a security layer, unlike many of the on-prem, especially the legacy parts, which some of them were designed before cyber threats even came to the world. And you can see some kind of large enterprises with IT infrastructure, which goes back 20, 30 years. It's just working, but it's very, very fragile and vulnerable. So in this sense, if you apply the basic features which enable to process data, you can enable a very effective enablement of processing risk around data. And this is a huge opportunity. And some of the cloud native tools around data are demonstrating it. From a challenge point of view, because data is flowing everywhere. Yeah, you can just look. I'll give an example of Salesforce. Most organizations have Salesforce. They put super sensitive data in Salesforce, and the data doesn't even kind of reside in their infrastructure. It's in someone else's infrastructure and comes in and out. So I'm just giving an example of a huge challenge when it comes to cloud and the movement from data to infrastructure and to endpoints and to services. And the way to really kind of deal with it, this is the challenge, is to build basically, I really think that data protection strategies, which kind of are overarching and trying to kind of look, some people have a tendency to simplify this issue, but you kind of try and grasp the complexity and go step by step, you really can be really effective. And from my experience, going back to my previous roles, generally the level of security in the cloud, from my experience, is higher than in on-prem environments.
So Asaf, you bring up a great quick question, and I'm kind of going to throw this to the group. What solutions has the industry adopted to secure this sensitive data? And what challenges do we face when we're trying to adapt to the scale and speed of data in the cloud, right? Because that's just completely different. Who'd want to tackle that one first?
Yeah, I can take that. And I think there are a couple of different ways, right? To Asaf's point, security and engineering in general has benefited greatly from sort of the cloud model, right? Like it has helped us really, the speed has helped us. For example, if you're talking about data in different locations, so there's obviously a centralized data lake model, right? Like where you pull all of your data in and kind of do say detections there. But then what we also realized is that one solution may not work. So I think kind of multi-pronged approach of how can we do host-based detections that are on the host or on endpoint. Then we have bulk detections or database detections on a data lake, SIEM, whatever you want to call it. And then in-stream detections, right? Like so Kafka and how we use streaming data has been revolutionary for security, especially going the cloud native, like ephemeral way. You can keep the data, you can run your detections in stream, you can deploy it in different places, and then you can choose to keep the data or not because you already have the insights from that data, right? So I think sort of in stream, and then the difference between structured data and unstructured data and how to use both, I think has been both the opportunity with the native cloud technology and also a fun technological challenge for security teams to solve.
Who's got
I'll tag on to that because I completely agree. And I would I think, so first of all, I'm a huge optimist in general. I mean, I tend to see the world through rose-colored glasses, and I think also what it's introduced is repeatability. If I go back to the days of the data centers, and we'd want to have gold images so we knew every system had the same base platform. The problem was we had like 1,000 gold images and they were all different, so it kind of defeated that purpose. And then you have data in one spot and they take it away for testing. So that mode I talked about earlier, they pull the data out and they test it over here, and security team doesn't know about it, and they're only using dummy data. But as security practitioners, we know that means they're using production data because they want it to match production. So you get all these problems. And you fast forward to the cloud and you talk about things like infrastructure as code and all these newer technologies. We get the ability to start to have repeatability built in. So whether it's repeatability of code development, we can find issues earlier, repeatability of access to data, so we can build a repeatable process for how that data is accessed. And to my point earlier about the following the data, we look at like DSPM and things like that, where we can actually apply policies and follow that data wherever it goes. We build that repeatability, and when it's repeatable, we can drive down cost. I mean, security is typically seen as a cost center. We're reducing risk, but we do cost, so we can reduce cost. We can improve speed, so access to data, access to systems, things like that, deployment of systems, all these types of things. None of this was possible back when we had these big behemoth data centers. We just could not do this. Now, I mean, we can stand up and tear down systems on the fly, and we can ensure when we do that, they're stood up and they're torn down in a similar fashion. Similar policies are applied, the data is protected in a similar way, so on and so forth. So I think it's been a huge opportunity, and I think there's more to be done, but I think we've made huge strides because of what cloud has enabled us to do.
Yeah, Bob, anything to add, Asaf?
Yeah, so I agree that there are better security monitoring and security access control tools available in the cloud that are provided natively by the cloud vendors themselves. What I've seen, though, frankly, is it's more than just the availability of tools. It's the people's desire to use it, right? And to extend that control over a large infrastructure. Those tools were available on-prem too, and in data centers. You had to go out and buy them and manage them, of course. That was a little harder, but they largely didn't. And what I see in the cloud is the people who didn't do it well on-prem, they're not doing it well in the cloud as well. I mean, I'd love to be an optimist too, but this is what I'm seeing. So yeah, the tools are better, and the tools are more available, and there's better guidelines on how to use the tools. Okay, well, are you using them? No.
Yes. So my take, I'll probably add, because I agree with everything which was said by my friends here, but just to add on that. So one feature would be that the cloud new, I would say, cloud native data products, which are which are effective, and you have to test it to see it's effective. They manage to identify risk around data in a much more effective way in petabyte scale. And that's done because of cloud technology, and I touched it, compute and all the resources the cloud provides. So identify risk and fix risk according to priority on a petabyte scale. That can be done very automatically and smartly and neatly in cloud by the new coming, I would say, data products. The second is limiting the proliferation of risk. Proliferation of risk is the way data is moving throughout your environment. So let's take 365. Most organizations will have 365, SharePoint, OneDrive. Your ability to understand the data there and to identify risk, and then to make sure it doesn't proliferate to other parts of your entity because you did it effectively, becomes much more effective. And on a practical level, the way to do it is very effective discovery, meaning where your data is to a very granular level, following by very effective classification on a petabyte scale, identifying data according to families of sensitivity, whether it's structured and unstructured, managed data and unmanaged throughout an entirety of environments, And once you have this ability, the next stage will be basically to do the remediation. And just kind of to wrap up this point, a few weeks ago I heard Rich Beich, the CISO of AT&T. He was speaking about the difference between. He was talking about the fact that everyone's all the time doing remediation, but you have to look when you do investment in security. You really want to invest in root cause of the problems. And when it comes to data, the root cause is, and I touched it, and I'm just reiterating it, it's your ability to discover, classify, tag. If you don't do it correctly on a petabyte scale, if you do not do it correctly, all the rest will really be ineffective. Okay, so this is the place to invest.
Yeah, that's an awesome approach. All right, we're around 30 minutes in. I know some people have to drop, but give us 10 more minutes. We're about to play a game with everyone here. All right, it's my favorite part of doing these panels. We get to play a game. So the game we're going to play is the following. I want you all to imagine that you don't enjoy life anymore, and you decided to become a CISO of a company that had dozens of petabytes worth of data. And how do you prioritize your first 6 months at a company like that? Who wants to be the first to go down this path of not enjoying life? Bob?
By the way, it's the other way around. You don't know you're unhappy until you become a CISO. Yeah, I would just follow up with what Asaf said. I think the right thing to do is before you start building petabytes of data or actually merging and creating them, is you really have to spend the time. It's the non-sexy part, but it's the most important part, which is to know what you have, right? And to indeed discover it, find it, and spend the time, the investment to actually properly build the metadata structures, know how they work, keep them accurate, know the pedigree of the data. Again, not very fun, sexy work, but unless you do that, you really have no chance to get it right later. This is not the kind of thing you can come back and easily fix. And I've learned that lesson as well. You do have to get it right up front.
So I'll tag onto that because I agree with one caveat, because I love my job. I don't know. But again, I'm the eternal optimist. So maybe I'm a glutton for punishment. But I think you have to understand what's important to the business. And a lot of times you want to go in, and that goes back to Asaf's point around, classifying, tagging, and so forth, because you got to know what you have, because not all data is important, at least not as important as other types of data. So when you think about that, okay, what do I really need to be concerned about? You got the obvious stuff. You've got PII, those type of sensitive records, but there's also things that I think sometimes don't get the attention they need, and that is what data supports critical business processes. Like, how does your business make money, and what do they rely on to do that? And is that data is it protected? Do you have backups? Can you maintain business operations if that data becomes unavailable? A lot of times we're just focusing on the really critical stuff that we're afraid if we're breached would be a brand issue or reputation, whatever. We got to think a bit bigger. And so my approach would be to go understand the current landscape. What do I really need to care about? What's important to the business? What's important to my customers? How are we protecting that? What are the gaps? And where we have gaps, what are we doing to fix it? That would be the approach I took.
Who would like to go next? Swathi.
Yeah, and you said for 6 months, and James, you also said, hey, imagine, right? Like, we don't have to imagine, honestly. This is a real challenge for everyone going, taking a job in security. Every place, it's gonna have. There might be a degree of separation, right? Like it might go from tera, peta, giga, whatever, but we are talking big data. So I think touching on what Bob said and what Shaun said, as a leader, when you join the organization, thing to note also is you have to focus on sort of those small wins, right? Like, how can I get the team moving in the first 6 months? So not only understanding the data, crown jewels, and tagging and classifying, I think I would also take the approach of where are sort of high visibility, high privacy, security specific data repositories, right? There's always, like, security teams always work on sort of these, say, bespoke engagements as well. Like, hey, here is a small company, a giant enterprise company acquired, and there is a small data lake there. Or there is, hey, there is this one central repository of all customer related information that flows through. Hey, there is a PCI specific enclave. So identifying kind of any of these high leverage points, and because you said 6 months, that's a short amount of time, kind of focusing on those high security, but also big repositories of data. I think I would kind of take that approach of high risk data, higher repositories, and then kind of go down the path.
So I want to be mindful of time. We have just about 4 or 5 more minutes left here with our awesome audience, and there's a lot of questions, and unfortunately I don't think we're going to get to all of them, but I do kind of want to go to each of you and kind of ask you what's one thing you would tell any one of our audience members about tackling this petabyte data challenge. What's kind of one of your best practices, one of something that kind of guides you through this? Who would like to go first? I don't want to put Swathi on the spot.
That's okay. I can go first. I think LLMs are going to be our friends. So if there was one advice that I would take for myself and to the audience, is how can we leverage the models to help us solve this problem? Be it tagging, be it classifying, data lifecycle management, to Shaun's point. I think if we want to do this at scale, it has to be automated, programmatic, systematic. Then tooling is our best bet. So figuring out how we can get leverage and efficiency through tooling would be my go-to solution.
Bob?
So I don't think it's a technical recommendation. I think the first thing to do is to get the organization at all levels to understand that this is important and it matters. And you have to spend time and invest your energies in doing it right. It's nice to have the right tooling and make it easier with some AI, but unless the organization cares and actually invests time in it, it's really not going to work.
Shaun?
I'm the optimist. I got to bring you back up. I don't disagree with Bob said, but I would also add that we're not alone. I think a lot of times security practitioners, CISOs, leaders, whether it's with petabytes of data or whatever the challenge you're solving is, we try to kind of go at it the way that we've gone at it before, and whether it's enabling the business or users or whatever. But I don't think we lean on our peer network enough. Reach out. Other people have done this before and they're doing this. So let's have a conversation about what technologies exist. If it's to Bob's point, how do we make our data owners aware of their responsibilities so they actually do the things? The technology may exist and maybe they're not just doing the right things to protect it. So how do we engage them and enable them to understand their responsibilities? Those are things that some companies do very well. And we need to do a better job of reaching out and saying, like, how do you do that? What can I do better? How can I make my data owners aware of their responsibilities so I don't go down this path and just create a new path? I want to go down paths others have taken. I want to learn. And I think sometimes we could do a better job of reaching out to our network to understand better. So and use that. Look me up on LinkedIn. I'm happy to have a conversation. I don't have all the answers. But again, I'm the optimist. So I'll at least make you feel good like you're doing the right thing.
Asaf, I'll have you sign us off. What's your take? What are you doing? You founded a company to solve the problem, right? So I mean, you kind of...
Yeah, I faced this issue previously, yes. So first of all, I would say that for security leaders and security teams and senior executives, putting their hands into data seems sometimes super scary because it's a complex environment. But really, kind of, because of the fact that we grew up from on-prem and we moved to cloud, and there's really no perimeter because the way it works today. If we'll meet a few years from now, and I would say, listen, there used to be a period where you protected your data without understanding the data. You used to keep it without really understanding what you're keeping, and you treated everything you have the same. If we meet 5 years from now, we look backward, it will look insane, and we're kind of shifting into this new paradigm, which the market is meeting it because of technology that has advanced here, and you can do it in a very, very effective way today. And in this sense, my first suggestion for CISO would be embark on this journey. This is going to be one of the best investments you're going to do. There are low-hanging fruits that you'll be able to meet in a very short period of time if you adopt the right technology. But it will pay off. You'll be part of the business. If you want to train an LLM model today and you extract internal data and want to practice it in a Gen AI environment, you can't do it you can't take data from your organization without understanding what you're taking out. It's a super risk, And at a CISO, you'll have to sign on these kinds of requests. You're going to meet it. You're already meeting it. So embark on this journey, move forward. Prioritize your data strategy or data protection. You don't have to do everything, but decide upon the first 5-6 steps and gradually move onwards. One of the best investments. And the last point would be invest in teams, people who understand data in security teams. We meet security teams, and sometimes you meet people who are not aware of data, who do not understand the nature of data. In security teams, you have to have data engineers, data scientists, and people who really understand how data behaves and how to mitigate threats around data and configure data which is misconfigured. So this would be my suggestion or tip.
Well, I appreciate that. I know we're out of time here, so we're going to have to wrap this up. I want to thank the team over at Sentra. Asaf, thank you so much for bringing this group of awesome minds to talk about this very, very challenge here. I want to thank everyone. Bob, Shaun, Swathi, thank you so much for taking time to join the Hacker News webinar series. I want to thank our awesome audience members who stayed around with us until the very, very end. And thank you so much for your kind words. And sorry we couldn't get to your questions. I promise there'll be someone in email answering all of those questions after the fact. On behalf of myself and the team at the Hacker News, let me thank you so much for tuning in. And most importantly, stay cyber safe, y'all. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Bye.